Perfect. We're all here and we can start. The last panel of the event is actually, it's a bit sad. We've spent the last 2 days learning and learning from industry leaders, travel professionals, and decision makers of the hospitality and tourism industry in Africa. And I have to say, I've been quite impressed with the level of expertise and insights that were shared across the many panels and the keynotes. Today, we are talking about Africa and the future of this beautiful, let's say, global destination. And let's position it as a hot destination moving forward. I'm your host and moderator for this panel, Dolores Semeraro. I'm connecting from Mauritius. And today I have the pleasure of having a fantastic panel that I'm very pleased to moderate. Ladies first, I'd like to introduce the Chief Executive Officer of Seychelles Tourist Board, Sherin Francis. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be on the platform today to share my experiences.
Happy to have you. And also happy to see you again after having you as a guest on my podcast.
It's always a pleasure, you know.
And then Zama, the Africa. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
The lovely gentlemen that are joining us today. The Chief Executive Officer. I'm so confused with so many Chief Executive Officers today. I'm in the C-suite. Enver Duminy from Cape Town Tourism. Welcome.
Good afternoon from Cape Town. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join such an illustrious group of people. I'm actually looking forward to learning from you guys. So yeah, I'm excited.
Well, and then let us welcome, last but not least, the man himself, the chairperson of the African Tourist Board, Mr. Cuthbert Ncube. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to brush shoulders with our captains within the tourism industry. It's going to be an exhilarating engagement. Thank you so much, Doris.
It's a real pleasure. I think we are all looking forward for some good conversation about how we can put the African tourism under the spotlight again and come back into the forefront of the travel and tourism industry. So let's start, Cuthbert, from you. And in your view, what do you think after all that has happened in the last few months, after the pandemic, still pandemic, and all the implications of the pandemic on the industry? Is it now the time to join forces and bring back the African tourism on the forefront? And what can be done to that?
Thank you so much. We, within the African Tourism Board, what we say is when you are running a marathon, there is a time where you need to pause a little bit and have a breather. So this pandemic has afforded us as Africa to pause and realign ourselves. And it is a time where we need to stop and rebrand the continent that has so much to offer. It is a time where we need to say, as a collective member state, let us have a collective exercise. Let us synchronize our efforts, especially as we are activating our tourism sector. It's unfortunate that we haven't seen a well-coordinated approach. Each member state has been doing his own decisions in terms, even the health protocols. We haven't seen a synchronized approach. We are saying it is high time to start selling, as much as we are looking at more of our domestic movements before the international community is activated back within the tourism sector, especially focusing on Africa. So the onus, it's up to us as the stakeholders, the whole value chain. We need then to sit down, rebrand, let us tell our story. It is an opportunity for us to sell Africa with its diversity, whereby we are putting everything in one pot, and then we sell it holistically within the intracontinental, within our our domestic tourism. We need to activate that. And thereafter, the international will come as a complement within our GDP. But yes, there is future in Africa, and I strongly believe that Africa will definitely and must be the powerhouse, the economic powerhouse of the whole world. Everybody is looking to Africa.
When we look at the collaboration and the cooperations between African countries to reposition not just their own country, but the continent, the Africa as a destination, do you see a spirit of collaboration across parties?
Look, like I said, that is as much as we are activating the tourism back, we haven't seen a well cohesive approach. And what pains, we have an enormous opportunity to take advantage of the abundance of natural resources, and we need to build our own competitiveness by better utilizing Africa's natural resources so as to generate nature-based tourism. By the way, we are not looking at the majority of 54 member states because it is a mission to make sure that we all have one objective. But let us start with one country. We have a case story of Rwanda. I mean, who have done so much within the tourism sector and beyond their economic space. So we're saying let us ease the connectivity issue so that at the end of the day, it attracts our domestic. We need to start promoting our domestic tourism. And thereafter, we need then to expand to our intra-Africa tourism, which is one of the segments of our market that we have so much ignored, expecting that tourism, we are looking at somebody who comes from abroad. We need to open up the borders now so that we are able to appreciate what God has afforded us as a continent.
You rightly mentioned the domestic tourism revival, that as a priority moving forward. Now, when we talk about domestic tourism in Africa, it's not that simple. It's not just the domestic tourism of the South African within South Africa or the Kenyans within Kenya. But let's talk on a more broader note on what we can call as the inter-countries, inter-African tourism in terms of domestic. Enver, from your point of view, what can be done to enhance that, to make sure that we all move forward into collectively promote inter-African tourism? Because many Africans, for example, they don't know that they're not able to visit their own continent, even less so sometimes their own country. What do you think?
Well, I think the challenge that we have is that we're still sitting with so many barriers on the continent when it comes to inter-Africa travel. Even if you look just at, there's about 30 carriers and there's 55 countries. In Europe, you've got 50 carriers and only 40 countries. And of course, with fewer carriers means it's less competitive, which means it affects price. And when you look at cost of travel in Africa, it's the one barrier. We are not the richest continent, even though we may have the richest in our earth. From a financial perspective, many Africans don't have that disposable income. And I think what is even stranger is when you look at air travel and air traffic. Sometimes if I want to get to a different African country from, let's say, Joburg to Marrakesh, I have to go via Europe. And I think this is one of the fundamental problems we have is that our air networks, our infrastructure, doesn't allow and facilitate that between African countries. And even though you can say, well, there's road transport and road traffic you can look at, that's fine. But again, if you look at the infrastructure, the quality of roads and infrastructure, it makes it extremely difficult. And the African countries are large and vast. So it's not like Europe where you can hop in a car and then you're in another country in an hour or two. Those are some of the fundamentals. But I think also, let's put the barriers aside. For me, the strangest thing is this continental passport, the e-visa for Africa, that was spoken about in 2016. The deadline was 2020. I'm here and I'm sitting and I'm saying, well, where is it? So I think what we do and I almost look at this as the Soccer World Cup. We seem to score our own goals as Africa. We don't seem, to Cuthbert's point, play like a team to try and win on behalf of Africa in order to win this Tourism World Cup. And in order for us to do that, we need to start figuring out the role of every single country on the continent and the position it can play that is unique, whether it's the striker or the goalkeeper. And in doing that, that means it's also going to affect the brand of Africa. And that's where I think we've also got a large role to play in owning our own narrative. Because everybody else is talking about Africa the way they see Africa. What we are doing is we're allowing others to continue to talk about Africa in that way, and we're not owning our own collective stories. And I think that's where marketing and promotion comes in, and especially for destination marketing organizations on this continent, we need to be playing a stronger role in collaborating, in working together and finding synergies of how we can cross-promote. Because I'll be honest with you, I love Seychelles. I would love to go there, and I would love also to promote Seychelles in Cape Town. And vice versa, because the thing is that when somebody comes to Cape Town, no matter where they're from, if I can promote Seychelles and Seychelles can benefit from it and vice versa, then we can create an internal velocity of travel between the destinations without having to say to people, well, I'm a slice of Europe, I'm a slice of Asia. Actually, I am true Africa. And that's kind of what we're looking at in order to address this.
When we identify what domestic demands actually mean for the countries, we can better understand how we can position our core message. We are so used to, as destinations, to appeal to international markets that somehow we have forgotten how to talk to our own people when it comes to enticing them to join the hospitality and tourism industry and enjoy what the country has to offer. And you have rightly said, when, for example, a South African visits the Seychelles, or when Seychellois visits South Africa as a destination, there's so, as Cuthbert mentioned, so much nature to visit, to experience, that, as you said, once you own your own narrative and you are able to tell your story, you don't let another person, you don't let another marketing agency tell your story. It's you telling yours. It's then that you really tackle that trust in travel that we all need to rebuild. So when we look at, for example, not just the trust of the travelers, so our customers, our consumers, and the people that are sustaining and supporting the industry, but also the trust of the private sector when it comes to investing in our destinations. That is a trust that has been heavily affected because a lot of private investments have been paused or stopped completely when it comes to approaching African destination. So Sherin, from your perspective in the Seychelles, how do you think that the destination can regain that trust?
So I believe in this very difficult time that the private sector depend more on us than ever before. The reason is because there's no revenue coming in, and in the past, in 2019 or the years before, a lot of activities, marketing activities, even the ones that we would generate, we would depend on them to join forces for us to work together. But right now, we have to realize there are no revenue coming in at all. If anything, the government have to support them so that they can survive this heat. So I firmly believe that as tourism board, this is where our role become even much more important and greater in all aspects. Here I'm saying initiating marketing activities where you don't expect them to participate for a fee. You have to create the space, the opportunity for them to gain visibility because they cannot really do it on their own right now. You also have to help them in understanding the trends. As a tourism board, you have access to much more data than they would. In my case, I am networking probably much more than they do. And we have to continuously do surveys to understand how things are evolving, access various market intelligence data from various platforms, be it the forward keys, being from visa from Amadeus and all this, because gathering all this data help us to understand what people are searching for, where are the trends, and I see in this time our role is even more important. They are depending on us right now, so I think it's the time that as tourism board we have to really be strong and take the leadership role in recovery. Of course, they would support because, like, for example, there's a lot of meetings we are having where there's, for example, the task force where we discuss about the reopening, all the procedures, and they are here with us to help us with the procedure, because at the end of the day, they are the end user of each and every procedure we'll be working on. But when it comes to marketing, this is the time that we as a tourism board have to take the lead, because and of course ensure that they survive, because we can facilitate as much as we want, but if the hotels, the DMCs, the various tourism services, they don't survive this, there will be no recovery. So you can be as your recovery can be as fast and as strong as much of your private sector have been able to survive this heat of the pandemic.
You rightly mentioned that it's a collaborative effort that comes from the public sector, the authorities, the institution, but importantly so also the private sector. So it's the duty of the tourist board to keep up the reputation of the destination. So to make sure that outside that destination reputation is strong and visible and inspires trust.
Exactly.
There has been a lot of loss and a lot of, obviously, within the revenues going down the drain for many private operators. We still want to make sure that we keep the destination reputation strong. And with that question, I'd like to go to Lee. When it comes to establishing a reputation that within the destination makes us feel as a safe destination, so that the private sector can continue to operate, and also new players can come into the scene and contribute and open new hotels and open new businesses. How can we make sure that we maintain a reputation that inspires trust?
You raised a very important point, Dolores, here. One of our jobs is to maintain the reputation of the brand there, and to ensure that we are keeping the destination visible. We are continuously communicating as well to the rest of the world. This is very important. So this is where, for example, if I would just use Seychelles as the example here, we've reopened the borders, we've had our procedures, and it's been over 3 months there, and I think we've done quite well. We've started receiving visitors, but yet we've not had a huge number of new imported cases, and even in these cases we've had no community transmission at all, which shows that we've been doing at least something right in the procedure. But it's very important that people out there know that Seychelles is a safe place to come for holiday. And this is where our role comes quite important there, is to continuously communicate the message out there. So we launched a digital campaign, Experience Seychelles, Our Home, Your Sanctuary, and we continuously in various forms and ways, especially through the digital space, communicating that message, making sure it's global. It's not reaching only our traditional markets, because if there's one thing I should say here is how things are right now, every country have an equal chance to contribute to your tourism baskets, because there are so much travel restrictions that you have to rely on those where the conditions are right.
Exactly.
For example, in Europe, there's the second wave. You cannot really rely much on Europe. So every single country, and this is where the regional countries which are much closer, which probably never used to be a tourism market, they also become equally relevant here. And our role is to continue to find those opportunities and hopefully convert it, and it's of course our private sector that will convert it for us, because they need to be open, they need to have their protocols and procedures in place to welcome those visitors at the from the results of our communication.
But you made a very good point. It's the collaboration between the tourist board and the private sector. Lee, tell me, in your opinion, what are the best practices what are the most successful strategies that you have seen in terms of re-establishing the reputation of the destination as a safe haven?
Well, what we've done in South Africa from the tourism business, council perspective, that basically looks after all the tourism business interests in the country. One is to ensure that we had very vibrant safety protocols right across the sector, and communicate these to government. For the sector to have been opened to this level by government is because we were promoting to government to make them feel comfortable that we are safe to open, and these are the measures that we're going to do to ensure that we do not spread COVID in our operations. But I think the bigger work now is that communicating that information to travelers into the country, to say, we are a safe destination, do come, these are the measures we've put in place, and we ensure that you're not going to be contracting COVID from our operations in our hotels or any of the operations we do in terms of the tourism sector. And coupled with that, and I think the word has been going around in terms of collaboration, whatever that we've done will be meaningless if we do not ensure collaboration. Because, for instance, in South Africa, you'll have tourists flying into OR, and they are connecting into Botswana and then coming back to South Africa. So that regional integration on the work that we're all doing separately, it's a next level discussion which we've we've agreed we're going to have with the regional tourism board to say, let's promote collaboration in saying these are the protocols that we all agree work, and they're basically standard protocols that are applied right across the world, and ensure that when a traveler comes in, they are able to connect without feeling that I might not be taken care of because this area is not necessarily safe, when we know that a lot of work has been done by businesses on the ground. This goes as far as even the testing, because when the travelers have to leave, go back to their countries, we know that the requirement for COVID, which is going to be with us probably for forever. Now we need to ensure that there is testing on the ground, especially now, considering this thing is fairly new to us, that the testing that is done in South Africa, we're able to make sure that in Zimbabwe, in Botswana, in Tanzania, all these SADC countries, at least to start, have the similar language, the similar unified communication on what we're doing to enable that bigger pool of support for the industry, that the industry is ready to grow. Another leg to this is as we need to confirm to travelers that when you visit our countries and you for whatever reason you get sick or you get infected from, anything is possible. We're dealing with a virus here, but these are the health systems that we have in our countries to ensure that we actually assist you as a traveler. That is another level of trust stamp that we need to be giving out as information to travelers. Just like, you come into our countries, this is how we're going to assist you. And that way, I believe it should be one way of coming and making sure that people that come into our countries feel secure and they're able to enjoy the destination. At least we have some level of trust in the various legs of what will be in the mind of a traveler. So a lot of work we need to do. We need to open a long more discussions in terms of collaboration right across the continent. And obviously a big start. I mean, there would be nothing if we did not do our good job with the local tourism, with SADC, at least from South African perspective. Let's ensure that there is a vibrant discussion and implementable solutions at the SADC level, and where we need to hold each other's hands, where some other country might be stronger on one aspect and the others might not. Let's hold each other's hands to actually move this forward.
I think you made a very valid point, because one of the main challenges now to not to have that is preventing international tourism and also domestic tourism as well. When I say domestic, in this case, I mean infra country between the African countries, is the lack of visibility of what can happen when I travel, when I arrive, and what happens whether I test negative, test positive, what happens when I go back to my own country. So this lack of visibility is probably, as of now, undoubtedly actually the number one reason that is preventing the travelers to book again, to travel again, to move, and to let the industry move forward. Now we look at, for example, I'd like to go to Cuthbert with a question that we received from the audience that is actually quite interesting. What is the short-term plan that African countries are supposed to undertake to revitalize the tourism sector again after what has happened with the COVID-19 pandemic? Because we can all talk about the huge and forthcoming spirit of collaboration, but on a short-term, actual basis, like actionable strategies that can be implemented, what do you think can be done, Cuthbert?
Thank you so much. In short, we need a cohesive approach. I believe that Africa has a potential and importance to economic development. I mean, there's no doubt about that. We need to structure and develop our own policies that will talk to us, that will talk about us, and our own strategies, and capitalize our respected regional assets that could be actually zoomed together. That then underscores the prioritization of the travel and tourism sector. I just want to allude with what Enver has indicated, especially on the price competitiveness, that we need to address the price competitiveness. We have excluded our domestic market segment. It's only now, after going through these difficult challenges, where we realize that, wow, we've got this market segment we have so much ignored. Let's try to tap into it. I think what is the way forward then? Having been imprisoned by legislations that were crafted by our colonizers in favor of their own interest, excluding the interests of Africa, and we are custodians of this lovely continent. So we need a buy-in, especially from governments. African governments, it's high time to regroup together. We have the AU who have crafted and came up with the agenda items, Agenda 63. I mean, it's great, but to me, as a tourism participant, I wouldn't really be so excited on a 2063-year plan. We need things to be implemented now. The focus with AU is to make sure that we have accessibility, connectivity within the continent. And you're looking at reviewing that in 20 years' time. That's naive of African governments. It is high time for us to say, look, enough is enough. Let's get things moving. Let's talk with one voice. It's unfortunate that we have operated in silos. Seychelles, we appreciate what Seychelles is doing, but we appreciate what Rwanda is doing. Imagine if we could regroup all those initiatives together as a block of nations, we can achieve a lot in Africa. I still believe that there is a lot to be done. But priority number one, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's review the legislations that were not meant for Africa. They were meant for somebody coming out of Africa. So this is our time. Let's learn a lesson as Africans.
So you are saying that I'm coming to you, Enver. Yeah, you are saying that we all need to do our homework first before calling for collaborations with others. Because if we don't have done our homework in our own countries and implemented and actioned upon the policies that are needed today, then how can we collaborate if we don't have it structured internally? In terms of what you were able to get done in South Africa when it comes to especially to tourism approach domestically or internationally, Enver, what were you able to achieve? What was the most actionable policy that you said, okay, I've done this, it's up and running and it's working?
Oh, that's actually a difficult question. But I think before I answer that question of what we've done that was different, it's just to come on to what Cuthbert was starting on is the decolonization. And I think even when it comes to safari, we need to decolonize safari. Because the thing is that safari is designed for a luxury sector of the market, which is mostly non-African. And when I refer to decolonizing safari, safari is unique whether you're in South Africa, Tanzania, or Kenya. It's different. But by decolonizing means decolonizing for locals, for people within your country. You can't even access those facilities and those experiences because of the prohibitive cost. And that is why I think tourism is in its little own enclave, that it doesn't feel part of the rest of the country, is that tourism is kind of almost a side item because others can't seem to benefit from it because it's their country. It's ours, it's our continent. And if the Africans can't enjoy Africa because it's prohibitive by cost or other rules, then the decolonization of safari is the one thing. And that means heavily discounted or free access for locals. Because the thing is that the local taxes is then given to government who look after that, who then give it to a private sector company who then makes money off it. And then the locals can't get access to it. So I think to Cuthbert's point is, I say to hell with the rules and the regulations. And I think that's what we do differently in Cape Town. And I think what makes us fortunate as Cape Town tourism is we're public-private. So basically I have these two parents, which is private sector and government. And of course, there are fights within the household. But as the child, I inherited some of the qualities and access to the funding. And my job as Cape Town Tourism, as a tourism board, is to make the magic happen. And the way we do it is to ask for forgiveness rather than for permission. Because I think a lot of government agencies have to continuously go to their principal and say, I need permission to do X, Y, and Z. And then what ends up happening is that political ideologies affect the destination brand and how it gets perceived. And for us, what's important about it is, again, as Africa, if we're going to own our own narrative, we must create our own rules because COVID-19 has taught us there are no rules. And I think for us, that's important as what we've done as a destination. I mean, we get wrapped over the knuckles a lot, don't get me wrong. We get lots of times where we get things wrong, but the times when we get things right is when people sit up and take notice and say, okay, let's do more of that. And for me, there used to be two pressures for travel, time and money. And there used to be a trade-off between the two. If you've got enough money, you can fly direct. If you've got too little money, you have to go through 2 or 3 other different countries to get to a place. And then it eats into your time to spend in the destination. But there's a third pressure now. It's trust. And the thing is that there is a lack of trust in the continent between countries, but also between industry, government, a lack of trust between visitors and products. And the thing is that in order to build trust, you need to build confidence. And in order to build confidence, it needs to start with communication. And communication is about your brand and delivering on a brand promise, to be honest, to say we are making mistakes, but this is what we are doing, right to what Leah said. So for me, those 3 pressures now is what we face as Africa, but I see it as 3 opportunities. Because in Africa, you can have all the time in the world. You don't need a lot of money to get around in Africa. And if there's only one place to trust, it's where civilization of the rest of the world started, and it's in Africa. So who can you trust except for Mother Africa? And I think those are the things that we need to use as our strengths in order to claim back Africa for Africans. And then, to Cuthbert's point, then the international tourists can be the cherry on top.
Yeah, let's talk about the international tourism. I'm coming to you, Sherin, with my next question. When it comes to protocols that are unfortunately mandatory today, especially when it comes to all the guidelines that needs to be implemented from the moment you board the plane to the moment you actually land at your destination, and then you go to your hotels and you start your holiday and your experience. There's so many protocols that needs to be implemented and needs to be developed and observed, that this can very much discourage international tourism, any tourism in general. How would that impact, and how is this impacting Seychelles, Sherin?
Actually, it's a good question for me, because I can totally give real life example here. So Seychelles, we've opened with a series of measures. From the first one is what we call the permitted list of countries where visitors can come from, and even the permitted list of countries, it's separated into two categories based on their level of risk. And it starts with the pre-testing before travel, the COVID-19 test, where the low risk countries, it's 72 hours prior to your flight, and the more risky countries, it's 48 hours prior to your flight. And of course, when you get to Seychelles, if you're coming from one of these categories where the risks are higher, you have to stay your first 7 days in a property. You're not quarantined, because you are not confined to your hotel room. You can stay within the property, but your movement on the island are limited, because you are only allowed to move after you've taken a COVID PCR test on the 6th day. This is when you're allowed to be able to start exploring the islands and do island hoppings. And if you'd ask me how successful have these measures been, on a health side, I would say great, because we've managed to be able to keep COVID at bay. We don't have community transmissions. I think the people feel safe because of all the procedures, so they feel a bit more receptive towards opening up the border, and they feel more receptive to have tourists on the island because of all the measures. They know it's being done to ensure that the visitors are safe themselves, and they as the population are also safe. Of course, there's a whole rest of other protocols and measures in place while you access various services on the island. But from a tourist point of view, the response have been a mixture of feelings. There are visitors who despite the measures still traveled, and those who actually still traveled, we actually did a random survey a few weeks ago where 100% of them, they tell you that they actually feel safe in the destination, they are happy with the measures, and they would definitely recommend their friends and relatives to travel to Seychelles during this time, because they've experienced it firsthand, and they do feel safe when they are in Seychelles. But then you do have, on the other side here, there's a handful of visitors, because we receive a lot of inquiries on a daily basis, that tells you they would not come to Seychelles to stay in a hotel for 7 days, because Seychelles is all about the island experience. Even though hotels which is adjacent to the beach, you can still have access to the beach adjacent to it. And then you have countries which tells you a PCR test within 48 hours, it's practically impossible. They cannot do it. So your first criteria already it's eliminating them completely from traveling to Seychelles. So we've had a mixture of comments back, and have we been a bit more lenient? Probably in terms of recovery, would have been very far ahead as a destination. We would have more tourists from Europe, more tourists from probably a little bit everywhere. If we didn't have a permitted list of countries we were open to the rest of the world, we would probably have had a little bit from everywhere, because when we look at the market data today, the market intelligence data, we see there are pent-up demands from Russia, but Russia is not on the permitted list. There are pent-up demands from the United States, for example, but it's still not on our permitted list. So it's opportunities that as a destinations we are also missing out on. But you have to wait. As tourism, we want to push and say, open up, let these countries in, because our private sector needs that breath of fresh air. They need that relief. But at the same time, you have your population on the other side that says, hold on, we are okay, we are safe, we are healthy, please keep this thing at bay. So it's a very delicate balance. It's probably one of the toughest decisions the country have ever had to make. Open up to the rest of the world and at the same time keep your population safe. But to answer your question, Dolores, the measures, it's there to keep people safe. It's there for us to be able to keep telling the world it's your sanctuary, because then our campaign would have no sense if all of a sudden tomorrow there's like an outbreak in the community here, but at the same time it is limiting international travel. But it's the hard reality and hard truth we have to live with, I have to say.
Well, it's a fine balance between a coherent, there must be coherences between the government policies and the countries that are allowed to come into our destinations versus the protocols in place. And that is impacting the trust in travel. I want to go to Lee with these questions as well. I believe from your experience and from the feedback that you get from the sector in South Africa, this is something that is also affecting the hospitality across the Federation. What do you think?
Are you referring to the trust factor in this case?
Yes, because of the many protocols and guidelines that we need to adhere and we need to implement. And that is, as Sherin said, it might discourage travelers, but on one hand, it makes them want to come because they know the destination is safe. But on the other hand, it needs to be a coherent approach based on which country are you coming from. In this case, Seychelles had the permitted list. How about in your case?
We had a permitted list, and as the tourism businesses in the country, we lobbied, daily, communicating to government and expressing to them. We consulted health professionals, really respected scientists who told us that this permitted list system was just PR. It had no effect whatsoever. So we needed real scientific data to base our argument, and we presented this to government in a number of forums. And as we speak now, government totally removed the list. Now borders are open for people to come. We only require you to have a negative PCR test to come into South Africa now. So for us, it's a really, really a great victory won after many cries. Now we can actually focus on what do we do with the tourists once they're here, how do we support the tourists once they're here, and how do we assure them that once they're here and they are affected in any way, that we provide them with the best facilities and support whilst they're in the country. And we're having requests, and obviously slow at the moment, but we're starting to get really good requests for tourists to come into South Africa. Obviously, this came in late, as you're well aware. You talk to government for weeks and months about something, and they wake up in the morning, they announce, yes, the borders are open. You haven't had time to go to those destinations to prepare and do what is necessary in terms of marketing and so forth. But we are pretty certain that the case that we presented to the government and their scientists, and they understand exactly that opening the borders and just requiring the PCR test is sufficient for us to be able to start planning properly the tourism business going forward.
Indeed. If the borders are open right now, actually, when I look at the protocols in place for Seychelles, of course, we're talking about an island destination, so quite a sensitive environment, being an island, in fact. So when it comes to South Africa, I want to have Enver views on. I'm actually curious to know, now that the borders are open and everybody can come, there is no list. They only need to have a negative PCR. No, he's gone. He doesn't want to answer the question. Very well. So my question was like, now that the borders are open and everybody can come in with the negative test and explore the countries and move on. So what happens if I'm tested positive while I'm in the country?
So what happens if you are tested positive is that we do have protocols, health protocols, where government will then intervene and work with you, but it will be at your own cost, because the thing is that before you get here, you should have tested negative. So if that test is incorrect or fake, then there are more concerning issues than the actual incident itself. But I think the fact is that it's becoming standard practice now of the PCR test before you get even on a flight. And then there's also tests before you even board. So I think there are many other opportunities before somebody even arrives in the destination for some bits of checks and balance. But of course, it doesn't guarantee it, because nothing also stops someone from contracting it when they are in a destination. So we mustn't forget about that. So it's important also that we also work with communities and understand how communities can also get confidence from tourism and vice versa. Because we can't forget, tourism is about communities. That's where experiences happen. It's not just an attraction. An attraction is about its people that makes the vibe and the energy come to life. And I think it's about finding that balance. But Lee was quite clear in her response to say, we've got world-class systems in place. We even got digital solutions where through a Bluetooth technology, you can find out whether you were even in close proximity to someone who had COVID-19. So I think the technology allows us to at least inform people, but I think we still got a long way to go. Even though the numbers are trickling in, I think the one thing is the borders are open. Now it's up to us to convert that. And for me, as much as Europe is closed now for their second wave, Africa's open. If I look at it, Europe, US, and Australia are closed to China. China is looking for somewhere to go. Let them come here. But also, if you look at the continent, there's a lot of youth on the continent who are a lot more resilient to COVID-19. So I see the time for Africa right now is to capitalize on everybody else's shop door being closed and us saying, come to the Mall of Africa. We've got everything you need and the prices are right.
It's quite, it sounds like the perfect tagline. However, the Chinese borders are actually closed to Chinese tourists going outbound, going abroad. So we will have to wait a little bit to get the Chinese back in our resorts and hotels and landmarks and tourism destination. But you did point out rightly that there is a sort of like there's a new wave of domestic risk takers, those that are willing to travel because they are prepared, they're knowledgeable about the procedures, and they are ready to take that adventure. They're ready to travel, they're ready to discover, to move again. And when I look at the African country, continental tourism, which country do you say is now leading in terms of traveling inter-Africa?
Sure. There's clearly no easy questions here.
Sorry, I kind of called you up like
who I think is leading, I think Kenya has definitely shown, Rwanda. I mean, I love what Seychelles has been doing. I've been kind of admiring them from afar, especially in the digital space. And I think those are the opportunities. I am a little bit disappointed from a South African perspective that we haven't moved as quickly, to capitalize on that. But I think also, as South Africa, we also have perceptual issues of our country from the rest of Africa, the xenophobia. And I think, again, for us, there's perceptions and then there's reality that actually feeds those perceptions. And I think for us right now is that we cannot look overseas for international tourism. And as much as we want to attract things from across Africa, there are still too many barriers. What we need to focus on right now is domestic. There's pent-up demand because our South Africans can't travel anywhere right now to where they would go. And if you look at the cost of travel across Africa, I think right now is to capitalize on that. But also what we need to do is recreate products for Africans, because a lot of things we've designed are for international tourists. And I think that also creates a barrier, kind of this mystical barrier that locals are saying, those are for tourists, not for us. And then the price becomes the next inhibitor. So I think right now is the time for us, and that's what we're doing as Cape Town Tourism. We're actually challenging products in Cape Town to say, how can you be more African? Actually, how can you be more Cape Townian for Cape Townians before you even make it for South Africans or the rest of Europe? And that means decolonizing product experiences in Cape Town. And so far, I've been getting lots of no's, but it doesn't stop us from continuing to challenge the status quo, because I think, to Cuthbert's point, the rules and regulations and status quo that have been here for decades and maybe even centuries, they need to be unraveled, they need to be challenged. Otherwise, we'll have the same conversation in the next 10 years, and our kids will have it in the next 100 years. The time for change is now. And it's our time to actually make that change, because there's no better opportunity when everybody is struggling. Now's the time for us to rise as Africa.
So we're talking about involving the communities, realigning the pricing strategies, and creating a product line and a new offerings and a new package line that would appeal to the domestic market in Africa. I would like to go with this point. I think it needs further clarification, and I'd like to have the insights, because it's not easy to define a new product line and redefine your product offerings for not just your own country, but other African countries, considering that they're all very peculiar and they're all culturally diverse and they all have their own preferences. What do you think can be done so that every tourism destination and different tourist board across Africa, many of them are connected today, to make sure that to help them understand how they can better produce packages and offers to their own local market? With this question, I would like to have the insights of Lee as well, because it is quite crucial to define new packages, new offerings, new activities, and realign them to the preferences of the local market. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah. You know what? I've actually been fascinated in the recent days. I mean, Instagram, kids go there, and, I had to view some of the what comes up there. I've been so fascinated by pictures of the continent that young people are producing, that some have never heard of, I've never seen in any brochure. And so I'm encouraged by that, because one, it tells me something that I've been through to a number of countries in the continent. Now, it tells me that we need to have more young people come into tourism. Let's open the space, let's give them funding, let's give them tools to actually grow the sector, because those corners of the continent are absolutely stunning. That really, this is in Tanzania? Why didn't I know about this? Some young person is taking photographs of this place, and you're like, why didn't I know this when I've never seen it? So we need to actually have more of those, which will encourage us to travel into the continent, because those are absolutely stunning pictures. In fact, they even go and say the Africa that they never show you kind of tagline. It's so fascinating to me. So young people need to be brought into the sector, injecting new knowledge, and be able to change those brochures. Those brochures have been circulating for years. Same pictures, same markets being requested to come through. We're tired. We need to have fresh brochures that shows us the actual worth of really wonderful activities and destinations in the continent. Without bringing in young people, I'm old. I mean, I'm supposed to be looking forward to retirement soon. So we need to move out and really get young people to come into the space and really take over. Africa is failing its youth, which is the largest in terms of per capita ratio in the world. And we need to be able to to give them a really fair chance in tourism, because we know that this is a sector that has got real immediate results in terms of growing the revenue and actually employing people. So I think that for me, it would be the utmost #1 priority that we need to ensure we do.
We actually had a very interesting panel before this, speaking about hospitality workforce, and you make exactly the right point to bring youth into the industry and to gain their trust, because with all these obviously challenges and difficult times that we're living, a lot of the new workforce that could potentially join the industry and bring in new ideas, creativity, and a fresh eye on the tourism industry is probably not quite trusting the industry. It's like, do I work in tourism right now? No, better I find another job. So we need to find ways to win their trust again and attract this talent into the tourism industry, so that, as you said, we reshuffle things and we take a fresh eye on all our destinations. In terms of viewing our own places, for the social media, the technology, the digital marketing plays a key role. I mean, the images that are circulating about the Seychelles are stunning. It really looks like a dream destination. And I absolutely agree with you when you say that there are brochures that have been circulating for years. And instead we have platforms like Instagram, where brand new images are winning the game and they are not being used. They're not being they're not being capitalized upon, so that we can gain better visibility. So there is a whole digital rebranding going on behind the scene. We just need to accept it. We need to embrace it. To discuss with all of you that because of the use of technology and digital marketing today, we are seeing a brand new image and brand new visuals of our own destinations, and we need to embrace that to make sure we are up to speed, up to trend. And in a way, they are showing, as Lee mentioned, our own countries as we have never seen them. So there's like a digital rebranding in process that is living a life on its own rather than us guiding it. So my question to all of you, actually, before we conclude the panel is, do we need to embrace that change and rebrand the way we look as destinations? Do we need a rebranding in terms of African tourism? Sherin, tell us.
Yes, I would definitely say yes, a big yes. I believe the digital space have brought to us an opportunity that we didn't have before. And any destination which has not yet embraced it, they're probably losing out a lot in terms of visibility. And the good thing with social media, with all the social platforms today, it provides an opportunity for your users, your own visitors, to create content for you that and make your job as a tourism board, as a destination, much easier. So there is a term now which is very, very common, known as the user-generated content. And believe me, if you are able to access content produced by your own visitor, you'd be surprised, one, at the amazing content there are out there on the internet today produced by your own visitors. Two, you'd probably, just like Lee said, you'll discover amazing things about the destination that you yourself probably you've been neglecting. You would see repeated content posts that probably you're like, maybe for you selling your own destination, you're not even paying attention to it, and you see visitors after visitors after visitors taking the same shot, and you're like, okay, maybe that needs to go in my destination video, because every visitor takes a photo of it. So I'm talking about the visitors here, but your own people, they are equally as good as bringing out the best out of your destination. Places that you've not been to. Seychelles, as small as it is, believe me, every day I see new photos that I'm like, where is this? Is that in Seychelles? But you get it, especially now during this period where everybody have had more screen time than ever. People have been posting so much content about the destination, which is just amazing. And at the end of the day, with the digital revolution, what you realize, it's not only the tourism board promoting the destination. People are consuming more images and videos than ever. A lot of people actually have moved away from blogs and anything that involves lots of reading, so people want more visual content. And the good thing with the digital space is that your people can participate as much in this. You as a tourism board, only you need to do is just facilitate. But the content can be produced by themselves, by your population, by your visitors that you can reuse. So we as Haitians, a lot of our contents we use today are actually contents produced by visitors. We just ask their permission to use it. We use it in our destination videos. We use it in any form and ways that you can possibly even think of. And it's probably before we were spending huge marketing budgets just creating those content. And sometimes you're not even showing the content that the visitors want to see. It's your visitors finally who are able to tell you what they are interested in and what others would be interested to see. So I think this is an opportunity for every destination. Nowadays, you have total control on who you want to reach, how you want to reach them, how long you need to reach them. And you have all the statistics as well, amazing statistics that a brochure would have never produced for you. So my message to every single destination out there is that you need to switch over to the digital space right now and dump those brochures, please.
So we all have to embrace a digital rebranding that is based on the user-generated content, so that we call it like technically, so that the content and the visuals, the experiences and the feedback that is generated by those who are traveling to our destinations, but also to those who live and breathe our own places, and they can give you a fresh eye on things. So let us embrace that the digital medium as a powerful tool to initiate a rebranding process that is not just coming up with a new tagline or a new pricing strategy, but really, as Sherin rightly said, is about showing to the world what the world wants to see and refresh the look of many of these visuals and videos that are out there. Yeah. Enver, what do you think about embracing technology to rebrand the destination?
I'm actually a big believer. Actually, it is what makes us as Cape Town Tourism. We don't have dollars as marketing budgets, and what we then use is technology. And we even had to rebrand ourselves as an organization in order to remain relevant. So we've moved from being called a DMO, a Destination Marketing Organization, to a DXO, which is a transformative organization, which means that we need to transform and embrace technology as a key driver for the future of the success of tourism. And I think it's not a choice. There is no choice in it. It is what it is. Digital is like air. I mean, if people don't have access to Wi-Fi, they are more worried about that than how the state of their room looks or whether the attraction is actually functional. For them, it's Wi-Fi. And I think, to Sherin's point is, content is everything. But I think more importantly is we need to allow digital to be uncontrollable control of your destination brand. As DXOs, we don't own the brand anymore. We never did. And I think that's the one thing we need to realize. And by allowing that to happen, our job is, yes, to facilitate. But I think also what we have an opportunity to do is to allow the citizens of a destination to actually talk about what makes them proud of their destination, rather than a few old people like me sitting in a little room and saying, okay, here's the brand position. I mean, that's gone. And for me, TikTok has really fundamentally changed how we even see marketing. Insta is great for the visuals, but I think TikTok has really actually taken over from a youth perspective of how they see their own destination and how they created a culture that is universal. And I think by that universality, actually, I'm making up words as I go along here. But I think for me, it's something that's universal. in such a way that actually connects and makes the world smaller and even more connected.
I love that you actually mention the do's and the actual the social media platforms, and I think TikTok is it's a no-brainer, and it's one of the social media platforms that will stay. It's here to stay, and if we can embrace it, it might sound funny at the beginning. It's a lot. I work a lot in digital marketing, but it is actually a new way of communicating, and if that is what the new generations want to use, so let's embrace it. Let's make the most of it. I think we're back with Cuthbert for you.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Welcome back. Tell us about your views.
Thank you. Well, that's connectivity. Look, I think the emphasis, especially in our discussion, is to see how best we can rebrand our continent. I would allude with my sister that the stories have been told by someone else. Our goal as African Tourism Board 2025, that's why the emphasis is domestic tourism. We want each and every citizen of this continent to be branded as a brand ambassador. Once you have that mentality, that attitude of being part of this exercise within the tourism sector, our tourism will definitely go a long way. And by the way, tourism is all about connectivity. It's all about connectivity, bringing people together from all walks of life. But we are saying charity must begin at home. It must start here. It must start now. So it is the only sector that breaks the divide, that separates us as citizens, that separates us as continents, and that also separates us as global citizens. We all belong to one family. So therefore, our emphasis is to say how best we can, especially now, as we are in a recovery mode. We are saying, please, it will only start with the domestic. People, they are afraid to travel from Europe. And even here in Africa, we are even scared to accept some of the visitors from Europe and Asia because of the scourge. And Africa has been spared of this scourge. So we need to take advantage. We need to group together. I would also request and plead, it's one of our motives, to say, as tourism boards, how best can we synergize with the airline industry? How best can we synergize with your heritage sites so that we talk the same level with all the value chain participants, so that we are able to employ, we are able to appreciate our domestic participants? That's our emphasis, and that's our message.
I love the action-oriented spirit, and I think that's what we need more than ever at the destination level, in the private sector, and most importantly, in the institutions. So I think that out of the panel today, if I may, summarize the takeaways, and I think we've touched some very good points when it comes to domestic travel, priorities, pricing strategies, product strategies, and also logistics and transport, which are the big challenges. And I'm glad we raised that challenge and we raised that point, because it needs to be talked of and it needs to be addressed. So moving forward, the industry will have to face the various waves of the virus outbreak, whether some countries are waiting for the vaccine to come in, some others are instead already operating within their new protocols. And we see the tourism industry along a very long journey ahead on travel recovery, but it's up to each one of us, and especially within the tourist board institution and the powers and what you represent for all of your destinations. It is up to us to make sure that all these solutions, strategies are implemented and actioned upon. So I love the spirit of the notes from Cuthbert. We need to act, we need to plan, but we need to act. And this was the spirit of today's conversation. Before we conclude the panel, would you like to leave us with your farewells? Lee, from your side.
Thank you for a really great discussion. I mean, I've learned quite a lot from the esteemed panel here today. And I want to say to Catberton, actually leading in us in terms of the African Tourism Board and the colleagues here, is that we need to chart the way as tourism businesses in terms of collaboration. The government will fund us on the way. Because if we were to wait for politicians to get this, we're not going to go anywhere. They'll be arguing about a sentence and repeatedly. So we need to work on this is our businesses. Let's work together to ensure that we collaborate as much as we can and move tourism in Africa to the next level. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lee. Enver, from your side.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to echo Lee's sentiments. It's a very esteemed panel. I've also learned so much. I think the only thing that I would like to leave with is, to your point, the road to recovery is a long one. And there's an old African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And I think we need to live up to that African proverb and actually make it and happen now. Thank you.
I love that proverb. Sherin, from you.
I would say this pandemic have provided the continent with a real opportunity that we should not let it pass, especially now that we've seen Europe is out of bound, America is out of bound. What do we have? We have each other right here next door. And we have the opportunity to build that relationship. It's now or never. If we don't make it now, I don't think we will ever make it in 1 year, 10 years down the line. And I think the low-hanging fruit right now is perhaps connectivity remains one key issue right now, because for Seychelles, for example, places where we have connectivity, we see there is a flow. Like with South Africa, there is a flow right now. South Africa is actually one of the markets where we're actually getting a bit of traction on. We're getting it from Kenya, a little bit Nairobi. We've been getting, but of course now we don't still have the Kenya Airways flight. But we can, why not develop travel corridors at this point between us, African countries? I think there are, like I say, opportunity, and if we don't do it now, probably we'll never do it in a decade to come. So let's seize the opportunity, like the saying goes, seize the day, carpe diem.
Yes, I love the idea of the travel corridor. Yes, Cuthbert, from your side.
Thank you so much, Lee. Let us start focusing on our quick wins, starting with Branding Africa and its perennial perception battles that we can change the status quo of the continent if we only stand together with one objective to see a unified and progressive continent. Let us break the divide that separates us as nations, as tourism boards. It is unfortunate that it has taken a pandemic to have these kind of discussions with Seychelles, with South Africa. That cannot be. Please, can we have a scenario where we group together and let's have robust discussions, let's pollinate among us each other, and let's have a case study of the successes of Seychelles, the successes of Kenya. What are they doing best? What can we learn from them? And thereby, we will definitely progress in terms of our objectives within the tourism sector. So if there was a time we need to appreciate and activate our domestic and intra-Africa movements, it is now, as Africa stands as a beacon of hope for all the population. Let us appreciate what God has bestowed upon us, and let us sell holistically, collectively, as a continent, not segmented as member states. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. And as today is Thanksgiving, I actually thank you all for joining the panel today and giving such a great feedback and great insights. I will now conclude the panel, and very good luck for the work ahead, and all the best to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys very much. Just a quick note here to add from as the organizer for this event. Thank you for the wonderful, wonderful and powerful and insightful session that we've just had about rebranding Africa. I think you guys definitely highlighted and emphasized on most of the critical issues that Africa is facing. Connectivity is one very important word. Local strength and local will for each country is definitely a very important point. Connectivity in terms of tower and telecom companies providing towers in different remote areas. That we believe is a direct contributor to rebranding Africa and rebranding tourism. So thank you guys very much. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.